Meditation and Spiritual Life, Swami Yatiswarananda. Chapter 3, The Soul and Its Destiny. The Problem of Problems. Faith in the pre existence of the soul, that means the soul existed before my body and will exist after the death of the body. Faith in the pre existence. So, obviously, faith, because in my experience, I do not have memory of my past life. So, it is faith. In the pre existence of the soul is a common feature of Hinduism, while faith in the post existence or immortality of the soul is common to almost all the great religions of the world. In his lecture on reincarnation, Swami Vivekananda says, of the many riddles that have perplexed the intellect of man in all climes and times, the most intricate is himself. Of the myriad mysteries that have called forth his energies to struggle for solution from the very dawn of history, the most mysterious is his own nature. It is at once the most insoluble enigma and the problem of all problems. As the starting point and repository of all we know and feel and do, there never has been nor will be a time when man's own nature will cease to demand his best and foremost attention. Each generation passes on to the next this problem of the nature of soul and its destiny, the great mystery of life and death. But fortunately, there are always a few intrepid and earnest souls who try to unravel the mystery and find a solution through self realization. Let us make an effort then to follow in the footsteps of these great ones. If we try hard enough and persistently enough, we may solve the problem for ourselves. In the remarkable book Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, the little girl Topsy is asked, "Do you know who made you?" "Nobody," as I nose on, says the child with a short laugh and adds, "I spec I just growed." I don't think nobody ever made me. Do we ever think like that? There are many grown ups in this strange world of ours who are not at all interested in this problem, but there are also some who cannot help asking the question, where do we come from? Have we been created like the things we see around us? Did we exist before our birth in this world? And shall we continue to exist after death? Such questions have been asked again and again down the ages. In the words of Walt Whitman, the two old, simple problems ever intertwined come close home, elusive, present, baffled, grappled by each successive age insoluble, passed on to us today, and we pass on the same. The biological explanation. So, as Swami Vivekananda himself says, as the starting point and repository of all we know, feel, and do, so there has never been nor will be a time when man's own nature will cease to demand the best and foremost attention. Man knows that I, myself, is the starting point uh, from where I can try to find out everything, because everything is in the mind. But generally speaking, the answer is so elusive. So, generations after generations, this is what happens, that a man who thinks and delves deep, his best and foremost attention goes to this one question: who am I? Where do I come from? What is my own nature? So, does every um, society questions, whether it's the literary society or the philosophical society, and it also accepts that the question has been asked successively through the ages, and we pass on the same question to the future. Now let's see different explanations that we have found. Western biologists divide the life of an individual multicellular organism, be it a fly, a bird, a beast, or man, into 5 different phases. So, the formation of the individual by the process called fertilization, the period of development, the period of adult stability, senescence, and death, the terminal event of the cycle. According to most biologists, the organism comes into being with all its characters through the process of hereditary transmission. There is no place for individual or personal immortality which the organism may attain through its progeny or descendants. Those organisms which do not produce the species ultimately cease to exist. So, biological simple explanation: when uh, the being comes to existence, then it is born. When it dies, it dies. Now, from where it is coming from, its hereditary transmission is happening. Simple enough, but it does not uh, consider the question of the soul at all. Let's see the Hindu conception of immortality. Now, before coming to that, so if we look from a biological standpoint, the body comes from this earth, it merges back into it. Then why should I even ask the question of soul at all? Soul is again a biological process, simple enough. Why even bother giving attention to such thoughts which cannot be proved scientifically or biologically? If it would have been so simple, the life is so simple, black and white, then there is no issue. But experiences, generations after generation, race after race, experiences have proved otherwise. Seekers who have turned inwards, they have found such truths which has attracted more seekers down the line in their lineage. and they have found the truths, and they claim that if you walk this path, you will also find it again. So it's not that one person has found, it cannot be replicated. So um, because of this experience, repetitive experience of humankind, the question lingers on. So, another answer, let's find the Hindu conception of immortality. Quite distinct from this view, biological view, there is another theory presented to us by the ancient Hindu spiritual teachers. They tell us that the physical life of every being passes through a cycle of six changes: birth, existence, growth, transformation, decline, and destruction. Destruction only means death of the form of the body. By death is meant that the being ceases to exist physically but does not cease to be. Its life continues on a subtler plane closer to the source. After a short interval, the soul is reborn in a new body. The soul is never destroyed, but its physical medium undergoes a cycle of changes. Now, a question comes that so the belief that the Hindu spiritual teachers teach, that soul takes on a body comes into, takes birth, exists, grows, transforms, declines, and fades off, and again after some time it takes another body. And theories behind this, uh, why it is taking, because of ajnana, and all those theories are there. Why is it still existing? Because many have who have walked the path of the spiritual teachers have realized the same truth once again and again. Swami Vivekananda, what he observes, let's see. Of all the theories that have been held by man about himself, that of a soul entity separate from the body and immortal has been the most widespread. And amongst those that held the belief of such a soul, the majority of the thoughtful had always believed also in its pre existence. From personal direct experience, the teachers of Vedanta tell us that the soul, or the spiritual entity, which passes through repeated embodiment, is immortal in itself. It existed before its birth and will continue to live eternally, even though it may pass through a series of births and deaths. To use a modern analogy, like the spectrum, which is not merely the visible band of light, but also that which extends beyond the violet and the red rays, the soul has an infinite past and also an infinite future. The soul of man is part of an infinite existence which connects the past, the present, the future, and transcends even that, both time and space. The past and the future existences of the spirit are not known to us. Now, see, all these thoughts and theories, what is the purpose? The purpose is very simple. When I reach that undivided state, when I realize, when I come face to face, when I understand when I experience it firsthand all the time, my undividedness, my connectedness, my uh, this beautiful word comes, continuum of existence, then I come to peace, I come to fulfillment which I am seeking. My unfulfillment, my desires uh, are part of that only. Why am I seeking for fulfillment? Because that is my real nature and I want to find it. But where am I finding it? Where am I searching for it? Through all my actions, thoughts, efforts, I'm trying to search for it outside only. Everything, validation, uh, proving myself right, correcting others, helping others, criticizing others. What am I doing? I am searching for that fulfillment, but in the wrong place, in the outside, not in the inside. So, coming back, the soul of man is part of an infinite existence which connects everything and transcends that also. The past and future existence of the spirit are not known to us, but in reality, there is a continuum of existence. Through, though nobody can deny the existence of his own self, though nobody can deny the existence of himself, its real nature can be understood only through the power of higher intuition. Kathopanishad says, this self cannot be seen through physical eyes, for it is without visible form, but it can be realized in the depths. So we attest most highest validity to what we see and experience. But existence is not limited to just the eyes, because eyes are light reflected and translated into electrical signals, processed by the brain, and um, which releases certain hormones which makes us feel in a certain way. That is what the reality is. And how what a strange um, thing it is. uh, my feeling of validity makes no sense actually. So if that be the case, then all other realms of existences which is beyond the eye, which I have not experienced it, how can I be so intelligent to even deny it? That's not intelligence, that's ignorance. The Katha Upanishad says, this self cannot be seen through physical eyes, for it is without visible form, but it can be realized. See, the Upanishads, Vedanta, um, ascribes the reality, the self, as it, because it is beyond speech and mind, it is beyond language, it cannot be defined. So, it is just a indicative term, but it can be realized. It can be realized. Also, again, word realized is indicative. Realization is as if in my mind, but no, it's not realization in that sense. mm, but it can be realized in the depths of the. So all these words, depths, in higher intuition, all these are indicative words. They are not what it is actually. Depths of the purified heart. Those who know it become immortal. The law of karma, as well as the doctrine of transmigration, is applicable only to bound souls. Those people who identify themselves with their ego, mind, senses, and body, they are born again and again. But those in whom a new, higher consciousness has dawned are freed from the false identification, and realizing their true nature as the infinite spirit, are freed from the cycle of birth and death. They become immortal. So this realizations have been happening, still happening, and will continue to happen. This is what this reality is what um, is making us question my reality, and people like us from generation to generation. What are we lacking? We are lacking the discipline to walk the path. Path is inward. Why am I walking outward? Because my habit, because uh, I fear that if I walk inward, what will happen to the outside? How will I live? How will I breathe? How will I eat? So, all those chains. The subtle body is born again and again in new gross bodies and gains fresher experiences. After each physical death, the subtle body may remain in the subtle worlds for a time until the time for rebirth comes close. All this takes place according to the unknown laws of the spiritual world. Every soul has to undergo these cycles of births and deaths until it realizes its real nature as the supreme, immutable, self luminous consciousness. So each soul has to undergo until it realizes. Now, this idea, this thought that mm, we have to undergo such things, all our experiences will slowly give, give us wisdom. See, as a human being, from childhood to old age, it is a progression in a general sense. Man achieves maturity and wisdom as he grows old. So, in that way, in that logic, it appears that the soul is also undergoing such purifications. So, the kind of maturity I will attain in this physical birth, in my next physical birth, I will be born with these wisdoms from my uh, young conscious ages. And as per the law of karma, I will be progressing. That's the logical thought process here. But the question comes once again that Why has the soul uh, got this ignorance at all? Where did it get this ignorance from? When God created this world, why did He create such ignorant souls who have to work their way out and finally achieve? And it has to worship this God and this and that. So, all these questions, somewhere Vivekananda says very clearly that if we read the scriptures, we understand one simple thought in Hindu thought process. It is bold enough to acknowledge that the answers to all these questions he does not know. He is not aware, he does not know, he doesn't claim to know why this is, why are we in this state. But he is very clear on one thing, that there is a way out. All the messengers, the prophets, the avatars have told the same thing, that there is a way out. And that's what Vivekananda says. If we go on bothering ourselves with this particular question, why am I in this state? It will, we will waste our entire life trying to find out the answer, but rather uh, how to come out. If we progress on that, it's worthwhile. Every soul has to undergo these cycles of births and deaths until it realizes its real nature as the supreme, immutable, self-luminous consciousness, the Atman. The real self or Atman is neither born nor does it die. It is, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Ajo Nitya Nitya Shashvato Ayam Purano. This self is unborn, eternal, immortal, and though ancient, is ever fresh. According to Vedanta, it is Ajnana or primordial ignorance that creates the notion of bondage for the Atman, which is actually ever free, intrinsically ever free. This identification of the self with the non self has been there from beginningless time. And as long as it lasts, the Atman remains the finite, individualized self or the ego. And as long as it lasts, the Atman remains the. So, what lasts? The identification of the self with the non self. If I identify myself with this mind and body, and as long as that identification will last, Atman remains as if finite, individualized self or ego, and is born repeatedly. Under the spell of ignorance, man forgets that his divine nature. But there comes a time in the life of every man. So, this forgetfulness also leads to all the experiences, good and bad, as according to the law of karma. Now, under the spell of ignorance, man forgets his divine nature beyond good and bad. But there comes a time in the life of every man when he begins to feel dimly or vaguely at first something about his spiritual nature. So, if I'm just a biological being coming and dying, And if we never feel this something dimly or vaguely at first about my spiritual nature, then the question would have never arisen, and even if it had arisen, it would have died very quickly. But it doesn't. The soul of man wakes up, as it were, from its eternal slumber. Will it wake up for everyone, dimly or vaguely even? No. Gita says that such paths not everyone experiences. Very few, and even of those few, very few walk the path, and of those very few who walk the path, from them also very few reach a high level. Out of those few who reach the high level, only very few reach the highest. So that's also a fact. The soul of man wakes up from his slumber and begins to struggle to realize its real nature. With the final dawn of higher consciousness, with the true spiritual awakening, when the soul realizes its spiritual nature and its inseparable connection with the Supreme Spirit, all karmas, the law of karma is transcended. All karmas fall off. It is like the shuttle just going out of the threshold of the earth and entering into space. The gravitational pull is left behind. The cycle of birth and death stops. Swami Vivekananda said, we too can then say, my play is done.